now resume its sitting. It is indeed a great honor and pleasure to welcome you to the sitting of the Honorable House of Representatives for today, Tuesday, December 12, 2023. I would like to extend special welcome to those joining us in the gallery, those online on various social media platforms, particularly the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica's live stream. Members, and so today will be a very good and efficient day. We have a long agenda. A very long agenda. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clark, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Oldis, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Ms. Grange, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Dr. Tufton, Mrs. Williams, Mr. Vaz, Mrs. Malawu Fort, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Main, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Terry Long, Dr. Dunn, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Witter, Ms. Smith, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brownberg, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henry Kitts, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Ms. Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright, Mrs. Malawu Fort, Mr. Holness,
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to join you in welcoming members to this sitting, which, just to indicate, is intended to be the penultimate sitting before the Christmas break. Penultimate, because we do have a matter that the leader of opposition business and I have had discussions on. We do recognize the difficulty there because we know the season and the pressure it puts onto all of us as MPs, particularly in our constituencies. But we know the business also of the legislature, which we have to make sure that we attend to. Madam Speaker, it is intended today to have two statements, one by the Minister of Tourism and the other by the Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, it is intended that, as you indicated earlier, the agenda today will be a little lengthy, and so, as per usual, we require the level of efficiencies to be brought to bear in terms of the presentations overall and the responses by members of the House. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Our first statement by Minister, would you be so kind as to carry the stand? Thank you. Will be from the Minister of Tourism and Leader of the House, Member of Parliament for St. James East Central. Please welcome the Minister to his feet.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today I stand in this honorable House to highlight the remarkable success of the Jamaica's tourism industry, which stands as a beacon of economic growth and prosperity. The record-breaking achievements in tourism have not only put Jamaica on the global map, but have become a catalyst for overall national economic advancement. Madam Speaker, Jamaica's tourism sector experienced unprecedented growth in 2023, attracting visitors from around the world who came for our pristine beaches, top-rated attractions, vibrant culture, delectable cuisine, and warm hospitality. This influx of tourists have translated into a significant economic boost, with revenues reaching new heights. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce estimates indicating that the island should record a total of 4,122,100 visitors for the period January to December 2023. Madam Speaker, we agree with the member, we're not showing off. No, we're not showing off, or we're not boasting today. We're not boasting. We're not boasting today, we're just telling you the facts. Madam Speaker, this would signal an increase of 23.7% over the total number of visitors recorded in 2022. Of this number, Madam Speaker, 2,875,549 are expected to be stopover visitors, and that, as you know, is the bread and butter, which represents a 16% increase over the number of stopover arrivals recorded in 2022. Additionally, we expect to end the year with a total of 1.246 million cruise passengers, which would represent a whopping 46.1% increase over 2023. Madam Speaker, this continues a spectacular growth pattern of tourism, both in terms of visitor arrivals, as you notice, as well as earnings. Indeed, we have gone 10 consecutive quarters since COVID. And Madam Speaker, 10 consecutive quarters of growth since COVID is a record for Jamaica and the region. Because as I move around and we ask what is happening in other places, theirs is more of a kind of a oscillatory graph, while ours is absolutely constantly going up, and that is a record position. But Madam Speaker, the better news is that the indications are that at the end of the next quarter, December 31st, we will again show significant growth to make it the 11th consecutive quarters of growth. In terms of tourism earnings, Madam Speaker, this influx of visitors expected to generate a whopping $4.265 billion in 2023, representing a projected increase of 17.8% over the revenue secured in 2022 and 17.2%, and this is important, 17.2% increase over the pre-pandemic year of 2019. Madam Speaker, you recall that we had indicated as part of our KPI that in 5 years we would be doing 5 million visitors and earn $5 billion in 5 years. And you remember the 5 by 5 by 5. Well, Madam Speaker, we had to revise that in 2020 when we came to 0. And the better news is that in 3 years, we have achieved now 4 by 4 by 3. So we are well on our track to reach 5 by 5 by 4 instead of by 5. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to indicate to the public a little bit about the value of that kind of revenue inflow. Because it is often that we say tourism don't benefit us and the money don't stay here. I just wanted to give you an indication of this, what this $4.265 billion mean in the first instance. And this instance is now before the visitor even reached Jamaica properly. He just book and pay. Doesn't consume one item. He doesn't even breathe our air yet. And here is it. He pays a fees for TEF of $57.5 million US dollars or 8.9 billion Jamaican dollars just to decide to come to Jamaica. The second, the departure tax of $100.6 million US dollars or 15.6 billion Jamaican dollars. Then he pays the airport improvement tax of $28.8 million, 4.47 billion Jamaican that represents. Then he pays the airport passenger levy, and that's 57.5 million US dollars, or again 8.9 billion. And then he pays the passenger fees and charges of some 69 million US, which is 10.7 billion Jamaica. And then he pays now at the Hotel de Garte, that is a room tax. He pays at 22.6 million, or 3.5 billion Jamaican dollars. Total overall, Madam Speaker, just for this year, for the fact that 2.8 million stopovers will come, it will mean just on the surface, without any consumption pattern expressed, 336 million US dollars or 52 billion Jamaican dollars into the economy even before the tourists start to breathe air in this country. And then, of course, when you add now the food that they eat and the transport that they use and the cars that they have all, and the Airbnb and the everything else, and you will understand what we're talking about when we say that the flow-through effect of the tourism dollar in the economy is substantial. And Madam Speaker, as we grow the economy and as we grow tourism, we are growing revenue. And that revenue, of course, is utilized in the many ways that you know. So, Madam Speaker, critical to enabling all of this is strategic partnerships. And so we have enhanced Jamaica's tourism success because we combine the resources and we expand our market reach and we create synergies and we collaborate and we compete in a lot of instances, Madam Speaker, instead of compete. And we have learned that because of COVID, that to compete is better because we share ideas and we develop synergies in the process. So we collaborate with airlines, travel agents, and hotel chains, which have helped to increase our brand awareness, attract more visitors, and diversify visitor experience. Madam Speaker, a good indication of that collaboration and competing, I think you saw all over social media and elsewhere in the last few days when Universal Studios was able to pick up Jamaica. And even the ducks are saying, we want to go to Jamaica. I thought that was very cute. And it tells you how creative we can be and what collaboration and participation together can mean. Madam Speaker, we believe that the continued growth of tourism is very critical in terms of another area of collaboration, and that is in airlifts and airlift commitment. And I'm pleased to advise that for the 23 to 24 winter season, Jamaica has been able to secure 1.05 million seats out of the USA market alone, and a total of 1.5 million seats across the world. Madam Speaker, to date, there's 5,914 flights that are booked out of key U.S. gateways into Sangsters International and the Norman Manley Airport for the period January 1 to April 24. And that, Madam Speaker, does not take into account the closing flight schedules that we have for this year. That this month of December so far, Madam Speaker, in 10 days, we have had over 60,000 visitors, which is averaging 10,000 a day. Which means that December is trending to be the first 300,000 visitor arrival month since COVID. 300,000 visitors expected in December, and that will be a record for December any time in the past. Madam Speaker, investor confidence continues to soar in the industry. And I'm proud to tell you that the projection of our 20,000 new rooms over the next 10 to 15 years is fully on track. And in 2024, we will be bringing in 2,800 new rooms, starting, of course, in April of 2024, and we'll be opening new hotels throughout the year as we go along. Madam Speaker, Princess will have their 2,000-room hotel open, the first 1,000 rooms. We will have Rio's 750 rooms open, and in fact, tomorrow, we are going to open the Royalton Blue Waters in Trelawney. Where is the member from North? Yes. And next week, Madam Speaker, we're going to be breaking ground for 3 towers, multi-story, the largest, the highest building that Jamaica would see, a 25-story condo complex with hotel and commercials. But what is next month, the 20th? January 20th. No question about that. So, Madam Speaker, the investment is rolling. And while I was in London, a new entity called...
The House Leader's time for speaking has expired.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the Minister be allowed to complete his presentation. Madam Speaker, the Minister has indicated that he can complete his presentation in 5 minutes.
House, the question is, the Minister be allowed no more than 10 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and grateful to my colleagues for offering the extra time. Madam Speaker, I will proceed with alacrity here. As I indicated to you, the investment climate is alive, strong, and Jamaica is hot in that circles. I just came out of London World Travel Market, where a new entity for us in this region, Lopison Group, that has an impressive portfolio of 17,000 rooms across the world, and who are now looking here in Jamaica to establish 2,500 rooms in destination Jamaica. That will bring jobs, Madam Speaker, more and more jobs. And only yesterday, I got a call from Thailand, Madam Speaker, where one of the largest health tourism entity is now eyeing a 500-acre property here to build out a huge and powerful health and wellness attraction that attracts not the low end of the market, because their clients, as they tell me, are multi-millionaires and billionaires who just come for 3 and 4 months to sit down, relax, refurbish and refresh while they think out their next big project. They have clients that are at the top of the scale. And Jamaica needs that kind of clientele, that new demographic that we need at that higher end of the market. And we're excited about that. A number of other investment prospects, Madam Speaker, from the Middle East. And the last time we were in Riyadh, we had consultation and discussion with a number of investment prospects that will be coming to Jamaica in the first half of next year to look at possibilities. Madam Speaker, in Europe, Eastern Europe, and also Mexico, the attractions to Jamaica for large investment is very strong indeed. Madam Speaker, one of the features of this report, which I'm making to Parliament, is about linkages. It's about linkages because, Madam Speaker, so beyond the direct impact of tourism in terms of the absolute dollars that flow into the coffers of the Central Treasury, Jamaica's thriving industry has become a driving force for other sectors of the economy. Local businesses, local restaurants and attractions, farmers and manufacturers have flourished as they cater to the diverse needs of the tourists. This in turn, Madam Speaker, has stimulated growth in agriculture, transportation, and various other business services. And Madam Speaker, I just wanted to indicate to you that one of the big push from our side in the industry this year is about the small and medium tourism enterprises. And we have spent a lot of time on the ordinary Jamaican to insert them in the value chain of tourism. And one of the success stories, and I'm glad the Minister of Agriculture is here because he bears out this one with us, as there is a partnership between the Tourism Enhancement Fund and RADA to establish an ALEX platform, which is an agri-linkages exchange platform. And on that platform, Madam Speaker, ordinary farmers with 3 acres, 1 acre, 2 acre, up to 5 acre, nobody bigger than 5 acre, is on this platform. And they connect directly to the hotels. And the hotels can purchase from them on the platform, and it's delivered to them, and they are paid appropriately. And I'm proud to tell you that for the year so far, over $1 billion Jamaican dollars has been traded on that platform between small farmers, 3 to 5 acres, and hotels across Jamaica. And RADA and TEF are working to strengthen that and to bring more farmers onto the platform. Madam Speaker, we have a program with Exim Bank, and we have put $1 billion there for the purpose of lending to small and medium enterprises. Little people who have a little 5-room here, or in Airbnb, or doing a little manufacturing of ordinary curio and other items that the visitors may need. And what we have done in conjunction with Exim Bank is to provide for a maximum of $25 million loan at 4.5% interest over 25 years. And Madam Speaker, the take-up rate has been phenomenal because already they have exceeded the lending of well over, in fact, 1.5 billion. And you know why? Because the repayment by the small borrowers have been phenomenally good. So, Madam Speaker, to strengthen that capacity, we have built out a whole program of training now and certification within the industry. And I'm excited about that because that's the strength of the sustainability of tourism. The human capital being upscaled at every level. And building what we call stackable credentials so that our workers can have not only portability, that is to say move up in the company, but they can have also, not just portability to move from one place to the other, but they can have promotional opportunities within the companies. And the portability is important because what it does is to say to the world that we have quality professionals here that can be utilized in your plant and facilities anywhere in the world that they go. And so we established the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation in 2017, which in the last 5 years has certified 15,000 workers in the tourism industry, with the American Hotel and Lodging Institute designation and the American Culinary Foundation. So you walk around now, you no longer know cook. You know, you're not even a chef now, you're a sous chef. And you can walk around with your ACP, American Culinary Partner, your American Hotel and Lodging Institute. But Madam Speaker, we didn't stop there this year in terms of just certifying. And you know, Madam Speaker, the purpose of this certification program, as I said, beyond portability and the ability for mobility within the entity, is also to enable us to change the market arrangements, the labor market arrangement in tourism. Because the call is for better paying arrangements and for more salaries and so on and so forth. But the basis for that has to be found. It cannot be that because you're casual worker and you're within this space, then you must attract large salaries. There has to be a determination, and that's why certification is so important. So what we do now is to be able to certify the worker. And if we certify you, we can classify you according to your certification, and then you can be remunerated according to your classification. And that's equity. And Jamaica and our Prime Minister and this government is wedded to two key elements, merit and equity. That's what we're about. So, Madam Speaker, to close the loop in terms of our human capital strategy, is that the social security of the worker is critical. And it has taken us a little time, and in the process I embrace the works of my colleague on the other side, who is not in the House at this time, but he was Minister of Tourism during my sabbatical, and and he did carry the program after we established it and did well in the process. So we completed the job and we did it well. So today, Jamaica is the only country in the world that has a comprehensive pension plan for all categories of workers in the tourism industry. And so I'm proud to say that the process began the 1st of January 2023. The government of Jamaica provided $1 billion Jamaican dollars to seed the process to enable what we call the augmented saver to be able to get the same pension, even though he starts saving at age 59 and retires at 65, he will get the same pension as though he was there from he was 18 years old. And he will get 200,000 Jamaican dollars per year, whether he served in the thing for 5 years or 25 years. And that is important. But, Madam Speaker, 900 workers have signed up already in the program, and the good news is that they have saved over 1 billion Jamaican dollars in the 1 year, so the fund now has 2.5 billion Jamaican dollars and moving on. Madam Speaker, I know we have to conclude, but I had to conclude on this point because it's so important to us. Because tourism is not about the tourists. Tourism is about the people of Jamaica. And everything that this government does, and every element of policy, every item of programming, and every project that we pursue is about the people of Jamaica. And so we thrive in building resilience and enable our people to be able to respond quickly and well to any disruption and disturbance. And I just want to close by saying that this year was a very strong year for Jamaica as a thought leader in tourism internationally. And we excelled, I think, at COP28 last week in Dubai. And Jamaica was able to cop 2 of the world's most prestigious awards in tourism. Jamaica was declared the world's leading family destination. And the world's leading cruise destination. Now, Madam Speaker, this is very important. It's very important because here is it that the country, this little piece of rock, excelled globally in the two areas of tourism that are worthwhile. That is, as a destination for the family and also for cruise. And I want to use the opportunity to commend and thank the players in the industry who have all enabled us to do this. The JISTV, the cruise partners all, and every single worker and every single partner that has worked so hard over the years. Madam Speaker, in closing, I just want to say that the world recognizes what we have done. The UNWTO and the UN, the United Nations, has designated February 17th as Global Tourism Resilience Day on the recommendation of Jamaica, and we took the resolution to the UN and had 94 countries signing off to declare it so. And so next year, February 17th, the world will come to Jamaica to celebrate the first anniversary of that declaration. The Secretary General of the UNWTO will be here. The Chairman of the Executive Council of the UNWTO will be here. Several leading ministers from across the world will be here. Private sector partners will be here. And together we will establish that Jamaica is not just the best family destination, it's not just the best cruise destination, but it's the best destination to live, to work, to rear your family, and to experience happiness and joy. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Next speaker.
I beg to move that we continue the agenda as is, as the other speaker will come at a later point today when we'll ask for a recommittal to enable statement by ministers.
Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcement.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited for the financial year 2018-2019. Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Ports Management and Security Limited for the financial year 2018-2019. The Customs Tariff Revision Amendment Number 2 Resolution 2023 under the Customs Act. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Extension of Period of Operation Number 6, Orders 2023, their resolutions and their social intervention updates for the period October 18 to 2023. October 18, 2023 to December 8, 2023. In respect of the Mount Salem community and environs in the parish of St. James Zone, the Augustown Zone, the Norwood community in the parish of St. James Zone, the Denham Town Community Zone, the Greenwich Town Zone, the Parade Gardens Zone, the Savannah Lamar Zone, under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act 2017. Ministry Paper number 115 to 118 of 2023, entitled the Cabinet Agenda Issues, dated October 2, 9, 23 and 30 of 2023, respectively. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamations, Rules and Regulations, 3049, Volume 146, dated Friday, December 8, 2023, number 382, enclosing the Emergency Powers Parish of St. James, Hanover and Westmoreland, Regulations 2023, under the Emergency Powers Act. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamation, Rules and Regulations, 3009, Volume 146, dated Friday, December 8, 2023, number 381, enclosing the emergency powers for the parishes of Clarendon, St. Catherine, and specified areas in the parish of St. Andrew, Regulations 2023, under the Emergency Powers Act. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement, Proclamation, Rules and Regulations, 3005, Volume 146, dated Friday 8, 2023, number 380, enclosing the provision under the Constitution of Jamaica, and the Auditor General's Department certified appropriation accounts for head 4000A, capital A, of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security for the year 2010-2011.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions, papers, reports from committees.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House a copy of the report of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee on its deliberations on the Integrity Commission's reports of investigations into concerns that certain employees of Petrojam Limited failed to file their statutory declaration for the period ending December 2019.
Notice of motion given orally.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House I will move. Be it resolved that the report of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee on its deliberations on the Integrity Commission's report of investigations into certain concerns that certain employees of Petrojam Limited failed to file their statutory declarations for the period ending December 2019, which was laid on the table of this House on the 12th day of December 2023, be adopted. No, not Madam. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice further that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following resolutions on the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Act 2017. The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Augustown Zone, Extension of Period of Operation number 6, or the 2023 resolution. Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Greenwich Town Zone, Extension of Period of Operation number 6, or the 2023 resolution. 3, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone, Extension of Period of Operation number 6, or the 2023 resolution. 4, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Mount Salem Community and Environs in the Parish of St. James Zone, Extension of Period of Operation number 6, or the 2023. The Law Reform Zone of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James, Extension of Period of Operation number 6, Order Resolution 2023. 6, the law reform zones of special operations, special security, and community development measures. The Parade Garden Zone, extension of period of operation number 6, order 2023 resolution. The law reform zones of special operations, special security, and community development measures. The Savannah Zone, extension of period of operation number 6, order 2023 resolution, which were all laid on the table in the House on the 12th day of December 2023, is hereby affirmed. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice at a later stage today. I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take these motions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, he will move the following motions. Customs Act, the Customs Tariff Revision Amendment number 2, Resolution 2023. Whereas Section 5.1 of the Customs Act provides that it shall be lawful for the House of Representatives from time to time by resolution to impose imports or export duties of customs upon any goods whatsoever, which may be imported into or exported from the island, and to revoke, reduce, increase, or alter any such duties, and to provide for the importation or exportation of any goods without payment of any custom duties thereon. And whereas the House of Representatives, by the Customs Tariff Revision Resolution 1972, imposed the import duties of customs set out in the first schedule of the resolution and provided in the fourth schedule to the resolution a list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemption. And whereas it is desirable to amend the first and fourth schedules of that resolution to implement the decision of the Council for Trade and Economic Development at its 55th meeting held in Guyana during the period November 28 as of January 2, 2024, the rate of common external tariff on chlorine be adjusted from the existing rate of 0.5% to a rate of 10%. Sorry, 0 to 5%. Let me read that again. As of January 2, 2024, the rate of common external tariff on chlorine be adjusted from the existing rate of 0 to 5% to a rate of 10%. And B, chlorine would be placed on the list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemptions. And whereas the opportunity is also being taken to correct errors appearing in Part 1 of the fourth schedule. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honorable House of Representatives as follows. 1. This resolution may be cited as the Customs Tariff Revision Amendment number 2 Resolution 2023, and which was laid on the table of the House on the 12th day of December 2023, shall be read and construed as one with the Customs Tariff Revision Resolution 1972, hereinafter referred to as the principal resolution, and all other amendments thereto. And 2. With effect from January 2, 2024, the first schedule of the principal resolution is amended in Chapter 28 in relation to the items numbered 2801.10 and described as chlorine by deleting the figure 0% appearing in the column headed duty rate and substituting therefore the figure 10%. 3. The principal resolution is amended in Part 1 of the fourth schedule, list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemptions. And A, by inserting next after the item numbered 2710.19.75 and described as hydraulic brake fluid and other prepared liquids for hydraulic transmission. And the following items and description. So in Schedule 2801.10.00 and on the other side chlorine. B, in the item numbered 2710.19.71 and described as lubricating oil-based stock, paraphyletic type, by deleting the numerals 71 and substituting therefore the numerals 81. And C, in the item numbered 2710.19.75 and described as hydraulic brake fluids and other prepared liquids for hydraulic transmissions, by deleting the numerals 75 and substituting therefore the numerals 85. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, the Minister will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to take the motion. May it please you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the movement was so fast a while ago, by the time I lift up my head is now Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read a first time on behalf of the Minister of Finance a bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read a first time as per the indication I made that the Minister will, the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to allow the Minister to take Thanks, House Leader. Questions and answers to questions? Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I beg to move on behalf of the Minister of Finance for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to allow the Minister to take the first reading of the bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I now move that the bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023 be read a first time.
Thanks. Clerk?
Sorry. A bill shortly entitled the Public Debt Management Amendment Act 2023 read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, the Minister will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable him to take the second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Thank you, House Leader. Will we be taking the other motion?
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Yes. Madam Speaker, I now move that a bill shortly entitled the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023 be read a first time.
Thanks, Clerk.
A bill shortly entitled the Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2023 read a first time.
Minister?
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages. Thank you, Madam
Minister. Public business, House Leader.
Madam Speaker, public business, the Minister of National Security will take these also motions. The Minister of Gender, many things, will take the Domestic Violence Act, and the Minister of Agriculture and Mining will take the measure with regards to the bauxite. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader, would you be so kind as to indicate the order in which they will speak?
Speaker, in the order that I referred them, to the Minister of National Security first, followed by the Minister of Gender, Sports and Culture, and then the Minister of Agriculture. And then, Madam Speaker, I will take the motion with regards to the report for the Integrity Oversight Committee, and then the Minister of Finance will conclude with his two measures.
Thank you very much, House Leader. We will now invite to his feet the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security, Member of Parliament for St. James Northwest. Would you be so kind as to provide the platform for speaking?
Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take the resolutions note which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on November 21, 2023, the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023 came into effect. Based on the amendments, the requirement to seek an extension of the zone every 60 days has been increased to 180 days, and we no longer have to come that frequently. I have chosen to highlight the specific amendment, Madam Speaker, because it signals to the people of Jamaica that the government and the Parliament continues to be innovative and pursue efficiency in conducting the people's business as far as relates to crime prevention in particular. The work within the 7 zones has transformed the communities and restored a sense of dignity to the residents. Madam Speaker, the ministry papers have been tabled in the House, and members can review the activities taking place in the communities. Madam Speaker, the document's success. The zones are not just the documented successes of the zones are not just infrastructural transformation, but have been evidenced in human capital development. This year, greater emphasis has been placed on the behavioral and development changes in the lives of the beneficiaries in the designated zones. Significant work was done in relation with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Ministry of Education, and we are moving into the psychosocial area rapidly. Greater focus on case management and psychosocial support services, The mental and emotional well-being of our citizens in these challenging areas are being treated as critical for crime reduction and diversion of our young people along a productive and creative pathway. Indeed, the first child, adolescent, and counseling and family service unit being established in St. James, and some 46 psychiatric aides have been trained. These psychiatric aides are individuals who are already working in the field in various areas of service areas that relates to the community, and they are provided with basic training to be able to identify those with emotional stress and strains early, and therefore get them to the right kind of professional counseling that is required to prevent them resorting to violence at any time or getting into any kind of other dysfunctional behavior. The institution itself is not yet complete in terms of physical structure, but we have staff assigned, and the training of the 46 aides in the various service areas will provide significant support in these communities and expand the kind of services and reach of the professionals working in the zones. While progress in the zone continues to be achieved, it has not been without its own inherent challenges. The joint forces have to a significant extent, maintained security and conducted coordinated internal security operations within its boundaries. Yet there have been occasional incidents which remind us that the force focus on these communities must continue, and we must persist with securing and transforming the communities. And indeed, not only will we focus on these 7 communities, but we'll look at how we can expand very rapidly in the new financial year to take services of the type that are available in these zones to the wider communities. In fact, the counseling services will be established in a number of years where they might be zoned at this point in time, but we'll be moving aggressively to ensure these difficult areas are addressed. In addition to that, of course, the new interministerial program with the Ministry of Education dealing with some 35 school districts is now taking shape and will be launched in the course of, has been launched and is already being implemented across a number of districts in the various areas. Consistent with the requirements on the law reform zones of special operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures Amendment Act 2023, we sought to further extend all 7 zones currently declared as zones of special operations. Acting on the advice of the National Security Council and in accordance with the law, reform zones of special operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, and in accordance with Section 5 of the Act, which guides that the Prime Minister and Council, after consultation with the Joint Command, may order, subject to affirmative resolution of the House of Representatives, extend the period referred to in Section 4.3, the Mount Salem, Denham Town, August Town, Greenwich Town, Norwood, Parade Gardens, and Savannah zones of special operation, Special Security and Community Development Measures to be extended for a further period of 180 days, which will expire on the 25th of June, 2024. Thank you.
Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is the first time these extending orders have been brought here since the amendments were enacted in November. In fact, I was looking on the Parliament's website to see if the Act was yet listed under the 2023 Acts, just to have a look at it, but it's not yet there. But I'm glad that the ministers confirmed that it was brought into effect. So we're now doing an extension for 180 days, which I think many of us will be relieved that we don't have to go through this repetition every 60 days, which we've been doing for the last several years. The ZOZOs are a work in progress. To some extent, they are an experiment in a different approach to trying to bring peace and order to war-torn or violence-torn communities. And we have supported them all along, and we continue to do so. And we are concerned about the use of states of emergency, as you know, Minister, and we see that the current ones have seen numerous incidents of murder occurring the last week or two. So we're very concerned that the whole mechanism, apart from the constitutionality of it, which we are testing in court, we are concerned that the effect of it is being diluted by its overuse, not to mention the other impacts it has on ordinary citizens and their, the frustrations of moving around where there are checkpoints and long lines of traffic as a result and so on. But the Zozos, on the other hand, have been relatively uncontroversial, and we see the ministry papers from time to time and the attempts at doing some basic things to uplift those communities, and we support them. And indeed, we have always argued that it should be more extensively used because there are many communities where there is a need for this type of intervention. But I think, is it 7 or 8 now, Minister? You have 7. So we're at 7 now. Started off with Mount Salem and Denham Town, I think, in 2017. It's now, and those are still under Zozos. And now have 7 communities. But there are, as I've said, many others that would like to see the kind of attention that these communities have received in terms of zinc fence removal and arrangements to provide birth certificates and other social interventions and investments that give communities a better chance at creating a better lifestyle and quality of life for their residents. So we would like to see this being rolled out more extensively. And indeed, the security aspect of it, which is very important, is of course a primary reason for it. And although it's not perfect, and there have been incidents in these zones from time to time, overall, the presence of the military, along with the police, and with the powers that are given under the ZOZA legislation, it has had a dampening effect on crime and violence in those communities, which everybody is happy for. So we have our support with this minister, and we look forward to seeing the ministry papers for the 6-month period to see what additional things will have been done over that more extended period then. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I want to follow up on what the Leader of the Opposition related to the social interventions in the ZOSOs.
Member, follow-up has to be questions.
No, man, I'm going to ask a question.
No, that's what you're required and allowed to do.
No, man, I'm going to ask a question.
In respect of the standing order. So please coin your follow-up in the format
no, man,
of a question.
I'm going to ask a question.
All right.
I'm going to be specific with my question.
All right, go, member.
And I'm going there, Speaker. My specific question relates to the criteria that the government uses to determine which of the ZOSOs gets the level of investment in social intervention. There is a disparity between some ZOSOs and others, and the extent to which you can invest in social intervention determines the success of the ZOSO. Now, all the communities are depressed. They suffer from similar characteristics and similar conditions. Now, I understand the government doesn't have an unlimited budget, but it is important to indicate what guides and what determines whether you invest 100 million in this one and 5 million in another. All of us would want the type of social intervention with zinc fence removals, all of those things. But I believe we need to know how you make those determinations. And as you go forward in adding new communities, the extent to which you can support those communities with the type of social intervention that we have seen in a couple of them.
Member, let me make an apology. The minister is not making a statement. He is debating a motion, which means you are allowed to speak at will, not just in the format of a question. My apologies. Member Brownberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm not going to repeat any of what was said before. My question or concern really relates very closely to what the member from Southeast St. Andrew has said, but not just there. I want to go a bit further. For you to actually determine the level of success of a ZOZO, What are the indicators that we're using? Now, I am very clear that when it comes to social investment and when it comes to what is happening in the zone and what we're trying to reduce and eliminate, it is going to take time, it is not an exact science, and you can't predict how long it will take. But I do believe that you should start with the committee having a sense as to what they would like to see, and a plan that says, if we do these things, we should see this kind of result in X period of time. It might not be as exact as that, but I find it difficult, as I have been looking at the reports for the different ZOZOs, to really capture a sense as to direction, as to where are we along that journey that we have embarked on. And because we are spending the kind of resources that we are, I believe that the people in the zone and the Jamaicans as a whole need to have a better idea as to what success is supposed to look like, how far away are we from it, and what is left to be done.
Well, a minute. Thank you, Member Burke, member from St. Andrew South-West. Next, the member from St. Andrew Western.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, my intervention really is a continuation of what the dialogue that you and I have been having both here in the Parliament and outside the Parliament, which is around the general acceptance that there are a number of constituencies exhibiting some of the same conditions as those that have been favored with the ZOZO. Specifically, I believe there are areas in my constituency that qualify but have not been brought under. I have indicated to you that there are specific things, specific plans and programs that we want to implement in parts of the constituency, and we have agreed, you and I have agreed as to what those are. The community development program or unit that has now been established in your ministry and the programs that they're pursuing. I'm just wondering if you could update us as to where that is and how and when are we likely to see a rollout of that and the benefits of some of that for some of the programs that have already been submitted and accepted.
Minister, do you want to start commenting, or would you like to complete the contributions from the members? Next to her feet should be the member from St. James West Central, and then last of all, the member from St. Anne Southeast. And then you may stand, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to lend my support to the various resolutions for the extensions of the various zones. And in particular, Madam Speaker, the Mount Salem zone, it falls in the constituency that I have the honor to represent. I also wish to say that I am pleased that these extensions are taking place under the amended provision, which allows for a longer time period for the zones to operate between one extension and the next. Madam Speaker, I couldn't help but reflect on when the law was being proposed. We actually had a longer period for the life of the zone. And there was so much fear about what it is that the legislation was seeking to do. And you live long enough, you live to see that things come around and people understand that the initial period that was proposed for a good reason. Because it's really difficult to come so often when the work is ongoing, particularly the community development work and even the security operations, to be back in the Parliament so frequently. And this is not to say that making the timely reports on progress is not important, but sometimes it becomes administratively unworkable. So I'm very pleased that these extensions will take place under the new provisions, and the extensions will allow for a greater time before we have to come back. Madam Speaker, the community of Mount Salem spans 2 constituencies. And since the last extension, the report to the Honourable House indicates that further work was done on the community development side. In particular, the Mount Salem Sports Complex, the resurfacing work is now complete, and final completion was in fact granted on November 30. The marking of the court is being arranged in collaboration with the Sports Development Foundation. Madam Speaker, sports is a unifying force in Jamaica, and we cannot underestimate the importance of sporting facilities in our communities, bringing together competing factions, working together in a different context. Madam Speaker, the Mount Salem Police Station also had final completion achieved on November 12, 2023, and I know the Honourable Minister, under whose portfolio this work is particularly pleased of the progress that has been made in improving police stations right across the country. For anyone who walks into Mount Salem and see the difference that the new station has made, you cannot help but wonder when we will get to the stage when all other stations that are in need of rehabilitation will be rehabilitated. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the progress, the community experiences moments of sensitivity and fragility, and I have received complaints about engagement between the security forces and members of the community. And I just use the opportunity to remind the members of the security force who are carrying out their duties in the space to do so as professionally and as respectfully as possible without compromising the work that they have to do. But the model is premised on the community taking responsibility for its peace, for its safety. I'm proud to say, Madam Speaker, that the Mount Salem zone has seen a remarkable transformation, and I look forward to the community members doing their part a little more to ensure that the changes will have the lasting intended effects. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Member from St. Anne Southeast.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, back in 2017, when the special zones of operation were implemented, at the time the government announced that in addition to the Ministry of National Security's budget, that the zones would have costed about 2.6 billion extra. I want to know what is the cost now for implementing these special zones. I want to know if it has increased, if it remains the same. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I'm asking this question is I've heard in the House, and I agree with the special zones, and I think it is a model that could be replicated rather than calling it a special zone for security reasons, that it could be something sociocultural and something sociological that is replicated across various communities. And if the cost is not prohibitive, especially in areas and in parishes where it is important, then I would ask that the government look at it. So what is the cost to implement zones now? Is there a mechanism that could be used if you consolidate the various things that are given to MPs during the year? For example, there are special allocations that are given. If there could be a consolidation, for instance, and those of us who are MPs could sit with whether it is you or the conceptualizers of special zones of operations to identify whether there could be something that looks like the Constituency Development Fund that is bundled in another source of funding. That is something that I'm asking if could be done. But those are the two questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Member. Minister? Turn your mic on, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me thank my colleagues, member of my colleague from St. James and member of the opposition. The entire Parliament has been very supportive, both in terms of the zone and in terms of the amendment to legislation which we are now executing. And I give all my colleagues, I expect my appreciation. The passage of the amendment really signaled the confirmation that this bill and the zones of special operation is essentially a development process based on a more secure and peaceful community, public safety. In beginning to answer first leader of the opposition, the criteria Ilria derived, the first criteria is based on what is laid out by the Planning Institute of Jamaica. But the immediate step is usually taken when there is a spike in violence in these communities. Recall from sometime, maybe a decade ago, in fact, but in more recent time, I think they'll do one review this year. The Planning Institute of Jamaica looks at a number of communities, larger urban and challenged, and identify the socio-economic differences. And based on that, they've identified just about 102 communities that have what they call extraordinary amount of social challenges. And those are communities that are the ones that fit the criteria for intervention. On the first occasion, what was then designated the Community Renewal Program, which did not take off in the way it should have taken off, those communities are all located in St. James, Clarendon, St. Catherine, the corporate area. We have added 2 communities in Westmoreland in recent times. But those are the communities. I think I couldn't give you a list of them, but they're documented at the PLJ publishes, and I'm sure we made available to the opposition to look at, and they lay out criteria. They do a combination of the various social paradigms, from employment, education levels, health quality, basic antenatal care, the quality of the physical status of the community, violence, poverty, etc. And then they list the communities, and then they do a combined outlook, which is very useful in terms of getting a good picture of what's happening in these communities. So those communities all fit, and therefore give an idea of how much we need to invest and what we need to do. We accept that openly. The fact is, so far we've been limited, 1, because of budget, and 2, as I said, the priority has been given to those with a high level of violence to start, but it doesn't mean we are ignoring the other communities at all. Social transformation committees, we have renamed it now, in a particular area. We are looking at that now, how they're structured. I've had discussion with the head of Jamaica Social Investment Fund, because, Madam Speaker, what will happen now is that there's a challenge in meeting regularly on time. And we're looking at, since there are more than 1 community off in an area, where the corporate area has 2, St. James now has 2, and Westmoreland 3, and Westmoreland has 1. And the senior officers who serve these areas, like the regional education officer, the regional labor and social security, the regional social development commission officer, they usually cover these entire areas. So we don't have a micro social transformation committee involving just the local committee members. We are looking at taking the higher level decision makers and then invite the committee members accordingly. So you'll still have 2 or 3 reps along with the councillors from the required area. But we'll be able to have less meetings, but with more impact. In other words, rather than discussing 3 small meetings in the corporate area once a month, which becomes quite time-consuming and usually impractical. We do 1 meeting with the relevant officers from the ministries there, and we can discuss the priorities and move on. The challenge we are facing, of course, is budget going forward, but we are not ignorant. We are looking at how we can expand. The level of success, like every social intervention program, has been open to question in terms of empirical numbers. And we have set up the City Security Secretariat, which relates to the national body that coordinates all social intervention programs, the Citizens Business Council. And they have a number of criteria, a large number of criteria, including educational, training, certification of those who are in. And we have done significant work in that area, and I could, in fact, provide data Normally, for those who attend the Citizens Business Council are largely technical people. The permanent secretary is head of agency, etc. But what is still a challenge as we have it now, because we're getting numbers. And we need to relate it to what exists before, so you need to know when can you exit and why and on what basis. And in the next phase of our program, the Ministry of National Security is not taking our social services, but we have some funding where you're trying to pilot these activities. The funding, the next set of funding we're getting from the UK, in fact, next international funding, partner funding, coming in, we are looking at establishing a more empirical basis for monitoring. In other words, we're going to do, as we go in, we do the database research. We have 3 committees that have been done, where the demographic data is laid out, the number of families, the level of education, unemployment, literacy, health status, etc. And we'll monitor those as we go through. What an indication of a number of gangs might be in there, a number of young adults on between 15 and 30, say. So those are the potential individuals to be involved in gangs, what they're doing, their educational status and training. So things like the certification by heart for skill set becomes a relevant issue for those. And those who should be in school, we seek to. In fact, another program which will be focused around these areas is what we know as this interministerial program between the Ministry of Education at the center and the Ministry of National Security, but will still involve at a crucial stage, involve intimately Labor and Social Security, SDC, and the Ministry of Health to ensure that we can coordinate the critical services in these areas. The government recognizes the challenges, and we are taking steps to see if we can move from what you might call pilot phase to institutional setup that will respond to the challenges facing these difficult communities. The cost per area, we estimate to range between 300 and 500 million per zone. 2.6 billion was designed for a number, limited number. But we are looking at between $300 and $500 million if we were to take each of these centers. So we'd like, go ahead. No, capital mainly, because, yeah, the recurrent would be within the institutions. So there might be some expansion, but not that significant. Why we move these partner funding into this thing like the zone and under the Citizens Business Council is to ensure that the agencies of government will do their work. So rather than a parallel project funding it, we look at the school, what they need to do in the schools. The schools are getting additional guidance counselors and other people. We got case managers who relate to the Ministry of National Security, the SDC, and the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. Basic thing that just finding the people who are in need of path is something that is a problem. So by relating it to this and integrating them in the program, we get them. In the case of the interministerial school program, what we is to identify the child who is either truant or only coming to school irregularly or have a challenge. The psychiatric aides, as we call them, maybe we should have another name because Jamaica don't like the term psychiatry, but we train them in the skill set to identify emotional challenges. We now find that the family of that child, and see what the challenges are. And we can bring them into the program, whether it is certification for skill set for father, some training program, and some counseling. And it can go as far as a social housing need. I've seen families in the constituency represent some time ago, I have forgotten, and they did seek to reach out. But you have in these urban centers, you have families that still live under a tarpaulin sheet beside a zinc fence. If we find that, irrespective of where they are, who they are, we then seek, we can bring in the social housing. So the idea of this is to bring the services together in those areas. But those professionals will be already employed. We are setting up some specialized, as I said, child and adolescent counseling centers and family services activity where we'll have to get additional professionals. We have labeled them exactly as I've said because I said if we get them labeled psychiatric clinic, nobody's going to go there. And it's not a strictly a psychiatric clinic, although the individual professionals are psychologists and counselors will be able to provide a next level of counseling to the families in these communities so that we can begin early to guide the entire unit. And if we say family, it may be a single mother or a single father. that's the direction we're going in, and I hope when we come to the 6-month report, I can give you more details. The project to, in fact, establish data, I think, of the 7 communities that have already done surveys. Okay? In the current 7, they have refined the sociological survey to show, in fact, out of my own insistence, I had some done in Norway, which has had, among those that have not had much capital yet. But we were able to identify the number of households, the age range, and therefore the risk and with a school or without a school. That data will be made available to each community, and that's when we can begin to see how we can we can move them to normalcy and move them out. The Mount Salem community, we didn't have all that data, but a lot of work was done, and there's good knowledge. And I'd say at this stage where Mount Salem is, we spent about $300 million, but work spent on the police station, not including that total, and the rehabilitation, the school, all the schools in those communities are being made to be infant and primary schools. We're not closing the base schools, but we are looking to remove the shift system on all these schools.
Minister, member from St. Andrew Eastern was making a note that she would like to say something.
Sure.
Permission granted?
Clarification. No, and I fully accept what you're saying, Minister, and I just wanted to have a follow-up. You started off by saying PIOJ says there's 101 communities that really need intervention. We're at basically 7 at 500 million. I think all of us in here want to see this replicated to get to the other 95 or 94. What is, if you can even say, is the vision for getting there? And how will the Parliament be able to immerse itself in ensuring that as a country we get, not as a Jamaica special zone of operations, but certainly as a country to make sure that we replicate these kinds of programs across the other 94 constituencies. Sorry.
Communities. Communities. Member.
Yes, we are looking at the entire, and some of the features will be introduced through the ministry, some of the things by different agencies across the years. But in terms of a cohesive approach, we'll have to take it in a systematic way. I know that the Social Investment Fund has been seeking funding for 30 communities additionally. We may not have the security platform in all of them, but they can begin the process, because this is a matter of really collaborate, not just getting all the agencies serving a difficult community to work together, so that instead of they work in silos and missing each other, they work as one team, which will give you strength and cohesiveness. The data we will seek to tighten up for all of the communities, because that's what we need to monitor. The interministerial school program, in fact, has 35 schools. Minister William, Minister from 35 schools, and they have fine-tuned their own approach. They now have the schools tier 1 to 4. They know the 8 tier 4 schools, which are the very difficult ones. And we are looking at how we can invest in all of those institutions to raise the quality and reach the students in these areas. I said, but in the community, we use the school, as I said, the gateway. We know Jamaican parents can just get their children to school, even though they attend, they register them. So once we can identify who is coming only 1 day a week or 2 days a week, or just register and gone, we then try to track it with the case managers and social workers, track them down and begin the process of finding the individuals. So that's how the work is going. In the case of Mount Salem, I'd say by the time we come to your next report, we may be transitioning Mount Salem to normalcy. The school is under major repair, the police station, and while the hospital is not part of it, they should be functional, and the titling of properties may have to continue beyond, but that will continue, will not be impacted, but in terms of other activities, we could move on. Greenwich Town, I don't have a budget here for yet, the member from Southwest St. Andrew, but they have listed a number of things they have done. You can verify zinc fence removal, some water connection, legal water connection, some economic enterprise support, work done on the St. Andrew Primary School. And I will repeat, I think the school is a very important institution in the community in which to interact with the wider community. Some documentation, some 350 residents, and entrepreneurial support to our businessmen. I remember my fishermen very well. I have to see him. Parade Gardens is still in the phase of what you call pre-planning phase. Not much has been done in terms of capital investment, but they've had a good run. Now in the same phase, some work as like in Greenwich Town of enterprise, solid waste management wardens, some beautification, summer camp, capacity building. The August Town, they have spent about $330 million across the similar areas. Some of them are like now in the pre-development phase. The work of the Citizen Business Council, which is what coordinates much of this to all the members. In addition to the zones, and the idea is for the government to kind of put full investment in a zone to demonstrate how effective it is and then do the replication that the member from Centre is asking for. So you'd have a structured institutional arrangement to follow. But they have extended their work beyond that. And I would comment that one of the benefit of data is critical. For example, what we're doing, in addition to the zones, we had to register, I think, 100,000, certify 100,000 skill set. We had to repair and upgrade 35 police stations to have appropriate entry for disabled, proper interview rooms, generally make it a modern police facility. And a number of other parameters that I could report on and next phase of criteria. But among the things we're doing was monitoring family services. And it was felt the commission should really function as a commission because there are a small body of people, the skill set and the concern, but didn't have the reach. And as a result of that, the Ministry of Education has taken steps to change the approach to engaging parents, and we seek to engage roughly over 100,000, 200,000 per year by having the commission set standards, programs, and that while other agencies of the ministry, in conjunction with other social services, will engage the parents in the communities so we can really effectively reach parents required. So we learn as we go along. I said it could have been considered at the beginning experimental, but I think we have gone this way. We have applied and we are learning from the application. We are going to make changes as we proceed and seek to really ensure we reach the communities identified by the Planning Institute, that we can really have a long-term solution to some of the really difficult social problems that we face as a country. And we know that will have an impact, direct impact on the level of criminal violence that is out there that we are seeking to contend with. In the meantime, while we have a legal difference philosophically, I said to my leader of the opposition, we continue to use strong policing to deal with the immediate criminal activity. I don't think we have a choice. We have currently expanded the force. For the first time, we have moved the force to its what is called establishment level. We have talked about many years boots on the ground, but there are 10,000 bob and weaving for a long time. We can say as of the end of this financial year, we'll have 14,000 police officers. And of course, the supporting teams within structuring that of corporals, sergeants, and inspectors up to officer level to ensure that we can provide. They have been provided with better stations. We are moving to ensure those that are still in bad shape will be fixed, will be properly fixed or rebuilt. In the coming financial year, we'll start them, and we'll look at a number of other development programs we'll bring to the attention of the House, their communications, their transportation, all in better shape. We are putting some pressure on them to make sure the Christmas season goes with good order. Very difficult, but they're in a better position to give some assurance despite of the challenges of homicide across the country. And I want to commend the officers who are at work. They're working hard. They're making the best effort to do in a difficult station. But we see the seed of success, Madam Speaker. The character, the criminals had started to change their mode of operation. They change, we change. And we are satisfied that as we have bright young professionals, we'll make the required adaptation and be able to take on the criminals that are harsh society, and we will have good order and better public safety with the police force that we are building out at this point in time. Let me thank the members and seek your support for affirming the resolution that I moved earlier to continue the zones of special operation in the 7 areas identified. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister of National Security. A member had asked to speak in addition to member from St. Anne Southeast. I had beckoned no. Members, as much as possible, we are going to stick to the rules. Once the minister is concluding a debate, persons are not allowed to speak. And once you allow one individual and then another asks, then we get into the chaos of having challenges. So the member who was beckoning, my apologies that you were not given the opportunity, but it is a precedence that I would not wish to begin. Thank you so much for understanding. Minister? Your mic was not, Minister.
Oh, sorry. I ask that the motion moved be approved.
Minister has closed the debate, and the question is that the motion be approved or adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you, Minister. Next to her feet is the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, the Member of Parliament for St. Catherine Central. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill, notice of which I gave earlier, and also for me to take it through all its... I gave earlier, Madam Speaker.
Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, esteemed members of this honorable House, today we find ourselves at the crossroads of justice and societal evolution as we deliberate upon a bill of utmost significance, an act to amend the Domestic Violence Act 1996. This legislative journey carries us back to the inception of the Domestic Violence Act, a pivotal moment in our history when victims were granted the means to reclaim control over their lives. The genesis of this amendment, Madam Speaker, lies in the discerning eyes of a joint select committee which meticulously scrutinized the existing legal framework. Their collective wisdom recognized the urgency for a comprehensive review, aligning the Act with the dynamic tapestry of Jamaican society. Madam Speaker, as we traverse the clauses of this transformative bill, we encounter a paradigm shift in the realm of protection orders. No longer confined to the narrow confines of spousal or parental relationships, the amendments embrace a broader spectrum, acknowledging the diverse relationships that may intertwine with the web of domestic violence. Madam Speaker, Section 4 undergoes a metamorphosis, empowering the court to issue protection orders that serve as guardians against an array of potential harms, from harassment to property damage. This isn't just legal fine-tuning, Madam Speaker. It is a declaration of our commitment to safeguard the vulnerable and strike fear into the hearts of those who would penetrate harm. The resonance of change echoes through Clause 4, where penalties for breaching protection orders are not merely adjusted, but dramatically elevated. This is a bold statement to our society, a declaration that we will not tolerate the violation of the sanctity of personal security. In a master stroke, Madam Speaker, a new subsection emerges, endowing me as minister with the power to flexibly amend monetary penalties, ensuring our legal arsenal stays attuned to the ever-evolving dynamics of domestic violence. So I beseech this House, Madam Speaker, this Honorable House, to not merely consider, but embrace the essence of this transformative bill. Madam Speaker, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Domestic Violence Act 1996, hereinafter referred to as the bill. You will recall that the Domestic Violence Act was passed on the 6th of May, 1996. This legislation was considered of critical importance at the time as it presented victims with an opportunity to take some control of their situation and provide in the provision of several orders tools for action in protecting life of victims. This act, along with others, was the subject of review by a joint select committee which opined after deliberations the need to have a comprehensive review of the act to update it to current realities in the Jamaican society. Several areas in the act were identified where amendments could be made in the short term to improve its operation. And this is what has been done with this bill currently before this Honorable House for debate today. Madam Speaker, this bill represents some critical areas which we believe can immediately impact the scourge of domestic violence and assist victims in their search for security and redress to these despicable acts. Madam Speaker, I propose to approach the debate of this bill by doing a clause-by-clause review at this time. So, Madam Speaker, Clause 1 addresses all preliminary issues in the bill. It establishes the short title and provides that the bill shall come into operation on a date to be appointed by the minister by notice published in the Gazette. Clause 2, Madam Speaker, amends Section 3 of the Act by deleting subsection 2 and substituting the following information on individuals who can make an application for an order under the Act. Thus, an application can be made by the spouse or parent of an individual in respect of whom the conduct has been made or is likely to be made. Where violence is used or threatened against a child or dependent, application can be made by a person with whom the child or dependent normally resides or resides on a regular basis, parent or guardian of the child or dependent, a dependent not mentally disabled. Also included as having the power to make this application is a person approved by the minister responsible for social work, a constable, and now the children's advocate where the threatened conduct is against a child. Madam Speaker, application for an order can also be made by a member of the respondent's household or one who is in a visiting relationship with the respondent. Subsection 4 is deleted, Madam Speaker, and the following is now substituted. In making a decision on whether to grant leave to apply to the court under subsection 2B, 6, may consider whether the application is in the best interest of the child or dependents. Also, in cases where the dependent does not have a disability, physical or mental, that the application is in that person's best interest and that no conflict arises between the applicant and the dependent. Madam Speaker, subsection 3B takes into account if the application being made to the court accords with the wishes or in the best interest of the person so entitled to apply for the order. Further, the court will examine if there is any conflict of interest between the applicant and the interest of the person so entitled to apply. It is recognized that on occasion, an abused spouse may not be able to make an application on their own and may need the help of someone to, as it is said, stand in the gap for them. The Act will therefore be further amended by inserting a new subsection after subsection 4, affording the minister power to amend the list of persons who may apply for a protection order under subsection 2 or 3. Madam Speaker, Clause 3 of the bill amends Section 4 of the Principal Act by deleting subsection 1 and replacing it with provisions to prohibit certain actions which may affect the victims of this kind of violence. Madam Speaker, this amendment takes into consideration the myriad of ways a devious mind can seek to cause prolonged damage, violence to the life of an abused person. A, the subsection now reads that an application may be made to the court for a protection order, and I quote, against a respondent in respect of alleged conduct, to prohibit the respondent from, 1, entering or staying in the prescribed person's household, 2, entering any area specified in the protection order where the residence of the prescribed person is located, 3, harassing the prescribed person, 4, damaging property of the said prescribed person, and 5, dealing with the property of the prescribed person in a way which can be considered abuse of the prescribed person. Madam Speaker, as we seek to balance the hands of justice and tighten possible means of violence against the vulnerable, Section 4, subsection 1B, will now direct the respondent to return property jointly or separately owned by the prescribed person that the respondent has in his or her possession or control, and hand over to the police any gun or other prohibited weapon in the respondent's possession or control. Subsection 2 is amended to include the words, is satisfied, in quotes, after the words, in quotes, on a balance of probabilities. So, Madam Speaker, Clause 4 of the bill provides for amendments to subsection 1 of Section 5 of the Principal Act by A, deleting the paltry sum of $10,000 and substituting the words $1 million. Deleting the words 6 months and substituting, therefore, the words 1 year. And C, introducing a new subsection 1A after subsection 1 to afford the minister the capacity to amend the monetary penalties under the legislation subject to affirmative resolution. Madam Speaker, the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons indicates that the bill is seeking to afford greater protection for victims suffering from the scourge of domestic violence. It is stated that the bill seeks to amend the Act to increase the categories of individuals who may apply for an order, expand the scope of protection orders, and increase penalties for breaching protection orders. So, Madam Speaker, I ask this Honorable House to give due consideration to the passing of this very important bill, as a critical step towards bringing amendments to the Domestic Violence Act in force. So, Madam Speaker, at this time I invite members of this Honourable House to participate in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Opposition Leader.
Madam Speaker, my understanding is that the debate will not close today. The opposition spokesperson needs to have an opportunity to read this thoroughly and consult with others on it. And the minister has agreed to afford us that opportunity. I just wanted to make some comments today. I was on the Joint Select Committee that reviewed the Sexual Offences Act, the Offences Against the Person Act, the Child Care and Protection Act, and the Domestic Violence Act in relation to violence against women and children. It was a committee that met for a long period of time, and the Domestic Violence Act was the last of the 4 pieces of legislation to be considered. It was recognized that experience after the passing of the Domestic Violence Act a couple decades ago showed that the issues concerning domestic violence and gender-based violence in Jamaica were complex issues involving a full array of socio-economic and cultural phenomena. Often the victim and the aggressor may live in the same yard, same household, even the same bedroom. The question of whether the effective way of dealing with domestic violence is through a court-based procedure or some other procedures such as has been employed in the case of sexual harassment and indeed in the industrial relations sphere was an issue. The effectiveness of the remedies granted by the court and the enforcement of those remedies to protect victims is also an issue of concern. And the reluctance of victims to embark upon a process involving going to court to try and seek remedies against somebody who they're in a relationship with is also a very real issue. So what we have here today really is, to my mind, tinkering with this issue. We are not addressing the fundamental challenges of domestic violence by this legislation. And the Joint Select Committee had called for a general and broad review of the Act, which we didn't have time to do that go around because so much time had been spent on the other pieces of legislation and we're anxious to wrap up the work of that committee. So I was actually hoping to hear from the minister that she would be appointing another Joint Select Committee to focus specifically on domestic violence so that all stakeholders, and there are many stakeholders, this is an issue which there is wide public interest in, and there are many stakeholders in the society who are very involved in this and want to see fundamental reforms. And I thought that we would have availed ourselves of the opportunity to appoint another Joint Select Committee so we could go into it in the depth that it deserves and try and see what institutional arrangements need to be put in place to provide a more favorable, a more salutary, a more efficacious architecture and ecosystem for protecting victims of domestic violence and indeed reforming those who violate the rights of others in the domestic sphere. And so I'm disappointed that that is not the announcement that we heard today. On the actual bill itself, essentially what it does is it expands the array of persons who can go to court to seek a protection order. It also expands the scope of orders that can be made by the court under the rubric of the protection order, and it increases the penalties, both the maximum fine and the maximum term of imprisonment. And it has the standard provision. It's not a masterstroke, Minister. It is a standard provision allowing the minister to amend by order the monetary penalties in the Act subject to affirmative resolution, because Jamaica has experienced inflation and is indeed experiencing it now. And therefore, monetary penalties do need to be adjusted from time to time so that they preserve their real value. So I know my colleagues will avail themselves of the opportunity to look in greater detail at the provisions of the bill itself. But I felt it necessary to make my contribution today to express my concerns about the approach that we're embarking on here, the inadequacy of it, and my disappointment that we're not going for that broad and comprehensive review that the Joint Select Committee had called for, and to ask the Minister to consider doing so without further delay. There's one point I wanted to make, having quickly glanced at the bill, and it concerns Clause 3 of the bill, which amends Section 4 and deals with what a protection order may prohibit somebody from doing. And I noticed that it doesn't speak to an order prohibiting the aggressor from communicating or otherwise interacting with the prescribed person, whether in person or indeed otherwise, because it may be done through the telephone or electronically. And I thought that that ought to be specifically addressed here. It does speak to harassment, but I think that there are instances in which an individual wants to be protected from any form of communication with that person. Leave them alone and stay away from them. And I think there ought to be, as one of the subparagraphs, a subparagraph specifically addressing that. And I'm glad that there will be a week in which the Minister can consider whether to take on board this suggestion or otherwise. So, Madam Speaker, we are not opposing the bill, but we are disappointed in the approach being taken, which we feel is really scratching the surface of a problem that's a deep problem and needs a more profound approach to looking at what ought to be the institutional arrangements along with the legislative support that can really make a big impact on Jamaica's serious problem of domestic violence and gender-based violence. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. The member from St. James, West Central.
Madam Speaker, I seek your leave to speak from a seat other than my own.
Permission granted.
May it please you, Madam Speaker. I rise to lend my support to this bill entitled An Act to Amend the Domestic Violence Act. Madam Speaker, this bill does not pretend to provide all of the solutions to this intractable problem of domestic violence. As a matter of fact, no single piece of legislation or an amending bill can provide an all-embracing solution to a problem that is so invasive. This is coming as the Minister with responsibility for the subject matter indicated as a response to a call to extend specifically the category of persons who can make an application under the law. Madam Speaker, it is no secret, for example, that the children's advocate and those who specifically look after the welfare of children have been asking for specific provision for the Office of Children's Advocate to be able to make an application. Madam Speaker, I have taken note with much interest of the repeated calls for joint select committees to review bills that are coming before the House. The experience shows that bills emerge with much improvement after they have been reviewed by joint select committees and after members of the society have had an opportunity to make submissions, make comments. And in my own personal experience, I have seen where a lot of misunderstandings have been cleared up and people have expressed how much they have learned, both from participation and observance of reviews by Joint Select Committees. Having said that, Madam Speaker, I think the nation will need to understand that the process will move slower. And so when you are calling for agility and you're calling for quick response, and at the same time you're asking for Joint Select Committee, something will give way. I am not making a qualitative pronouncement on the impact. I'm simply pointing out that when you insert additional steps in a process, important steps, then the process will take longer to complete. Madam Speaker, the other thing that this bill has done is to allow the minister, by order, subject to affirmative resolution, to amend the monetary penalties. It is no secret that the legislative wheels have not turned fast enough to ensure that penalties keep apace and that outdated penalties are updated. And over time, the parliamentary process has been creatively, a new process has been institutionalized to ensure that that aspect of amendment can be done quicker, and this bill is moving in that direction. The last point I wish to make, Madam Speaker, is that there are at least 2 amendments to be made to the bill, and one will cover the matter raised by the member from St. Andrew South in respect of the power of the court to make other orders. Usually, a provision is made that the court can make such order as it considers appropriate to take care of matters that arise in applications. And the other is just an omission that the bill is to be read and as one with the principal act. That amendment sheet will come, Madam Speaker. But I support the bill, and I know from my conversations with the minister piloting the bill that the more comprehensive work is being done. It's far advanced, but it was important to move with these amendments to address the calls that have been made to her. So, Madam Speaker, I think that when the bill is passed, it will go some way in addressing the concerns that have been raised repeatedly. And I know also that the work on the more comprehensive review is far advanced and will come to the Honourable House in due course.
Minister, to close the debate. Oh, sorry, my apologies, Minister. I remember you are not going to close today. But I'll just say you can just conclude in your statement just to close. No, no, she will comment. She's House Leader, so she will just comment. She's not closing the debate before I move to the other minister. She can. No, she would have to say that she's asking for the suspension, so she would still be required to speak. So she's House Leader and also Minister. She would still stand, ask for the suspension, and indicate that the debate is not yet concluded, a statement you made, but one she needs to reiterate, and that we will continue at either a date to be set next Tuesday or as she so desires. So, Minister, after which we will go to the next minister in line.
Madam Speaker, this bill is exciting everyone, to the point I'm being preempted. But I'm happy that it has everybody's interest. I am being preempted because I think I had not concluded my comments. So I was being preempted. But just to, Madam Speaker, if I may, I just want to indicate that the debate will continue. You're preempting me again. The debate will continue, Madam Speaker. I do not intend to close at this time, that the debate will continue next week to allow the opposition, my colleague spokesperson, to make her input, as well as others who may want to make a contribution. So, Madam Speaker, I ask at this time that the debate be suspended.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. We will next have to his feet the Minister of Agriculture and Mining. He is the Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth Southwestern. Would you be so kind as to invite the Minister to his feet? Your mic, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Honourable House will recall that the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Associated Producer Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited Order 2023 was previously made by me on October 4, 2023, which was subsequently tabled along with the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Associated Producer Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited Order 2023 Resolution and affirmed on October 24, 2023. However, Madam Speaker, due to a typographical error in paragraph 1 of the aforesaid resolution related to the correct name of the relevant company, it is necessary for the order to be reaffirmed correctly. Accordingly, the new legal instruments tabled before this Honourable House are the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Associated Producer Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited, number 2 Order 2023, and the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Associated Producer Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited, number 2 Order 2023 Resolution. This Honourable House should note that the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Act was passed in 1978, and the Act makes special provisions for bauxite, alumina, and other related enterprises that are involved in the winning of bauxite and or alumina in Jamaica. In this regard, the Act makes provisions inter alia for the power of the Minister to declare on behalf of the government to confirm agreements and arrangements between the government and bauxite producers, the power to declare as associated producer any bauxite producer, and the power to transfer or vest lands of bauxite producers. The Act also facilitates exemptions from approval, consents, transfer tax, stamp duty, and fees for lands being vested by associated producers. Within this framework, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Mining will be facilitating the issuance of vesting orders for the transfers of properties in subdivisions established by Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited to ease the backlog of titles owed to resettlers. In keeping with the provisions of Section 4.1 of the Bauxite and Aluminum Industry Special Provisions Act, on October 4, 2023, I declared Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited an associated producer. It is to be noted that I made the order on the basis that Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited is engaged in the winning in Jamaica of bauxite, and in my opinion is in a special relationship with the government by virtue of an establishment agreement dated September 6, 2018, entered into with the government of Jamaica acting through the Minister of Finance and the Public Service and then Minister of Transport and Mining. It should also be noted that Section 4.4 of the Act requires that this order be subject to affirmative resolution in the House of Representatives. So, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the order had gone through the stages before, but there was a typographical error, and based on the legal advice, we have to do it again, Mr. Speaker. In the circumstances, given the matters highlighted above, I ask that this Honourable House, for its full support in affirming by resolution the Bauxite and Alumina Industries Special Provisions Associated Producer, Discovery Bauxite Operations Limited, number 2 Order 2023. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
At this time, I'll ask the Leader of Opposition Business and also the Member of Parliament for Kingston Eastern and Port Royal to make his response.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, earlier the Minister in sotto voce did indicate that this is a very quick resolution for us to dispense with. And I appreciate the fact that this is non-controversial, and it is something that has been extended time and time again to the players in the industry. But I'm sure the Parliament will forgive me if I just spend a little time querying certain aspects of the sector as it relates to this operation, and to elicit from the Minister certain answers. Firstly, the arrangement that was entered into in 2018 took note of the fact that the government plays a crucial role in this particular operation, because the government through Jamaica Bauxite Mining is the majority player in this arrangement, and the Minister should be able to explain to us, as I had sought during the Standing Finance Committee last time, about the operations of JBM, especially in relation to its profitability or otherwise. The former minister had indicated to this Parliament that the JBM was pursuing a slew of economic commercial activities. I had questioned the issue of procurement in relation to those activities. Much of the funding of the JBM is derived from the operation that we are specifically talking about today. So, Minister, the first question is, where are we now with JBM's involvement in this arrangement? Is it profitable, as we are led to believe? What are the procurement guidelines that I had queried that weren't being followed, if those are being followed now? And in a more general way, the Minister, all of us, we do appreciate the concerns that affect the mining sector. We are all inside here committed to a proper environment. And sometimes the two, mining and environment, seem to be inextricably at loggerhead and clash. And persons with portfolio for mining these days no longer see it as sexy. And in fact, there is a lot of defensive posturing in relation to mining. One of the things that I had convinced your predecessor to do as we were embarking on it is to engage the public in an honest, frank discussion on mining. Where we are, why so many people feel let down, what are the benefits that were anticipated that are not flowing, and how do we realistically move forward, noting, it's my view, that mining is going to be here for a while longer. And it's not only in relation to bauxite alumina, but there are tremendous opportunities within our space for gold and copper. And importantly, and the Minister, you haven't spoken about this as yet, but the residue that we complain about, the environmental factors, we are not looking at the opportunity that, yes, I heard somebody say rare earth again. Yes, I'm going to talk about rare earth elements, because this, I believe, is fast becoming more commercially viable as the world now enters the space of renewable energy, electric vehicles, etc., etc., etc. So that is important. And Minister, in relation to the benefits, people are frustrated and upset because sometimes they can't see the real benefits that flow from mining. And I tell you, there is one that is palpable, but they tend not to speak too loudly because their other interests tend to overwhelm them. But you have the employees, and my trade union friends will quietly say to me, we have to protect the jobs because these jobs are relatively high-paying jobs. But colleagues inside here have also expressed concern, those who operate in bauxite communities, that every day they see the earth being taken out. They see some of the gaping holes, but especially of late, they are not seeing the benefits coming back into those communities. And I had proposed last year, Minister, that those members of parliament who are from bauxite producing constituencies, that they need to be treated with better respect, that they need to be consulted on the utilization of the resources that flow, and it's not just to the consolidated fund, but some of that money must go back in the communities. Must go back. And I know some of the bauxite companies, they do good charity work, welfare work, they assist with schools, but I think it has to be far more meaningful than that now. If the opposition that is out there is to be stemmed, is to be modified or mollified. And I know, for example, Minister, you have court action being pursued now. And I believe in independence of our courts and that they do have a role to play. But I believe if we have proper consultation, if we negotiate with communities, and we work out to identify the benefits that flow both ways, we could prevent some of these matters ending up in court and creating such uncertainty for the future of a sector that I believe will outlast us still. When I was Minister, we were told that we have 50 more years to go for bauxite alumina. All of a sudden, and I'm just out of office for 7 years, all of a sudden I'm now told it's only 20 years. So what has happened? And at that time, we on this side, I want to be explicit about it, we were always clear that there would be no mining in the captive country. So when we were told 50 years, that excluded any consideration of any mining activity in that sacred place. But we are told now we only have 20 or so years to go. Minister, I think we need to be certain about that because you still have JISTV, Alpha JISTV, where I'm still told that the Chinese are going to be investing billions of dollars to reestablish a facility there, which will be the largest alumina plant in Jamaica. We are still being told that Windalco intends to continue their operations, and only recently we know that Jamaica is fully back in operation, though again I express my disappointment that we didn't use that opportunity to revert to the bauxite levy instead of this profit-sharing arrangement. So I'm sorry to pile upon you all of these issues, but I think they are relevant for the salvation of the mining sector and to provide the credibility that the sector deserves as we look forward to a brighter future. Thank you very much, Madam.
The member for St. Andrew South Eastern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some concerns in relation to the financial viability of this company. Information has come to me that the company owes significant sums running into millions of US dollars to a state-owned entity which generally sells its product on a cash basis. But for some reason, in this particular case, significant sums have been allowed to accumulate. I also understand that there are also significant liabilities to private contractors and others. But in the case where this is a majority-owned government company, I want to know what steps are being taken by the government to ensure the financial viability and where monies are owed to other state agencies, what is in place to ensure that those funds are actually paid?
I now invite the Leader of the Opposition and a member of St. Andrew Southern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, I have one question, and it relates to the rare earth metals possibilities that the previous minister on this side had made some efforts towards exploring. My understanding is that when we ship raw bauxite to Louisiana, to the Gramercy refinery there, we are paid a royalty for that as bauxite, very low royalty. They refine it into alumina. It's then sold, smelted into aluminum or aluminium, whichever pronunciation you prefer. And they put all the byproducts of the refining process they have to deal with in the same way that we have to deal with them here. But they have, as I read a report some time ago, that they were entering into some arrangement, I think it was with a Canadian company, to extract the rare earth value, the rare earth elements from that byproduct, that sludge, and commercialize it. Now, that is value that we were never paid for. Jamaica was never paid for that value. We were paid for bauxite, and that's all we were paid for. Now, it may be difficult. I wouldn't say necessarily impossible. It may be difficult to make a claim for past value or for value that's derived from past shipments. But certainly, going forward, we should negotiate with the exporters of that bauxite that any further value added that is extracted from the ore that leaves, not just the bauxite, but any other metals, we must participate in a meaningful way in that value. We can't give that away. We'll never get that ore back. We suffer significant environmental degradation from the mining of it. We must get maximum value from it. So I urge the government to look at negotiating for that, because as technology evolves, the use of these metals becomes more and more important, and we must find a way of capturing the potential of that for our people. So I'm asking you to look at that in terms of something to negotiate for, some kind of participation in any value created from any element in the ore that we sell them for which we haven't been compensated when we sold it. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Let me start with the leader of the opposition. I don't think we are at cross purposes. Clearly, as you are aware, we have had explorations in relation to the concept of rare earth elements in residue. We have not, as a country, been at the stage where that exploration has led to commercially viable quantities of rare earth elements. So while I take the point in principle, just to say we have not reached there yet. We do have, however, exploratory licenses out, and people have made reports, and this is outside of the residue. This is outside of the residue. Exploratory licenses out around the country, and people have made reports that they have come across rare earth elements, and clearly we continue to monitor that. Part of what we have to put in place is an overarching regime, which I think is what you're saying, an overarching regime to ensure that we maximize any sort of resources, any sort of revenue that will come from dealing with rare earth elements. And in that regard, we are agreed, but we have not arrived at a place where we have seen any sort of commercial exploitation. But you've raised a specific matter, so I will look into it in relation to a specific arrangement. That hasn't come across, Vanessa. No problem.
I'm aware of the efforts that were made locally to pilot the extraction of the rare earth metals and commercialize it, and that hasn't yet reached fruition, and market conditions had an impact at the time. I'm more concerned about the raw bauxite that we export. We don't have the value added here of refining it into alumina. Arguably, we shouldn't be doing it at all, but we do it. But there are other elements in that we're not being paid for, and that the buyers of that raw bauxite are exploiting and starting to derive value from. And I'm saying we must make sure we try and capture a piece of that for ourselves. That's what I'm saying.
So let me put it this way. If that is happening, we agree. In other words, no information has come thus far that is happening, that other elements are being. So we are agreed that if that is happening, or if people do try and take steps, that we should put a framework in place. So yes, from now. So we agree on that. We agree on that. But just to be clear, we have no information that it is. That's in relation to the member from Southeast St. Andrew. So we have been monitoring the situation in relation to our partner. It's very important to understand the arrangement. So while it is that the government is a majority shareholder, owning 51%, the government has nothing to do with the operations of the company or the liabilities that the company itself comes into through its operation of the plant. Right? The government is a majority shareholder by virtue of the fact that it is a government's asset that is being operated by the company that is operating it. Clearly, we do monitor what happens in the industry, and where we do see that there are challenges, we do try to ensure that we engage our private sector partners to see what are the challenges. And we have had a number of such engagements over the last few weeks looking at the financial viability of the company. The company has assured us that they are financially viable, but in the regular cut and thrust of operations, that they have gone through good times and difficult times. And they have gone through a difficult period, which they are regularizing now. And where they have debts, they have agreed to a time frame to pay those debts, whether those debts be to government or those debts be to private contractors. We are monitoring to ensure that they keep with that time frame. And I am scheduled to have another meeting with one of the partners this week as we continue that monitoring process. So I'll leave it at that for now. If there are any more detailed questions, you can provide them and I'll try and answer them. But thank you for raising that, member. In relation to the leader of opposition business and a member from Eastern Kingston, who dealt with a number of matters, and I will try to go through all of them as quickly as possible. So Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited continues to operate profitably. It is still a profitable operation. As you rightfully said, and just to be clear, the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited does not operate the mining operations of the plant in St. Anne. Right? Again, just to make the point, yes, we are majority shareholders by virtue of we owning the assets, but we are not involved in the day-to-day operations of the plant or its liabilities, and that's very, very important. But you did make a point that was made by the last minister. Clearly, Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited was set up years ago to treat with our assets in relation to bauxite, and is a fairly asset-rich entity. But over the years has done very little with the assets under its charge, right? And has really kind of rested its laurels on the money it derives from bauxite. I think any forward-thinking institution would have to now look at how can you diversify your operations. So the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited does have a diversification plan that is looking at utilizing the assets. And I give you, for example, one in particular. The former Reynolds, which was the forerunner, would have had an industrial site that used to be used to deal with their equipment, etc. Wonderful property, but clearly has run down over the last 3 decades. And as such, one of the projects now that Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited has is to renovate that property for it to be leased to private interests. and that's underway. And already we have renovated parts of that property, and leases have already been put in place, so that is now generating some income. Additionally, as we look at the mining sector, we do see the rise of industrial minerals, like our limestone sector. I can tell you that the income that the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited earns from limestone mining has increased 300% over this year, largely because greater exports from our port at the Reynolds Pier. So clearly, one of the projects is looking at how can we expand the Reynolds Pier so that we can actually do more on the exportation of limestone. One of the things that I recognize, member, is that we are overdue a meeting. Right, so I'm going to stop there in terms of Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited, but I'm going to say very early in the new year, in January, we should sit down so I could go through some of these things, because again, your insight would help, seeing that you have significant experience having worked in the sector for a long time. A couple of other areas. The point that you make about engaging our citizens around bauxite and around mining, just to say, this minister believes that mining is sexy, right? And sexy, and we're going to bring sexy back to mining. In fact, if you hold on, and I'm going to come to him because he's leading. If you haven't seen, we've launched a new program called Mining Our Business, right, where we're putting out there some of the things that we're doing in the mining sector in a way that we are providing the information up front. But more importantly, I've charged State Minister Witter to be that person on the ground, engaging with our community councils, engaging with the areas where there are resettlements, where there are challenges. In fact, Minister has already toured 4 parishes with multiple companies over the last 2 months, looking at resettlement issues, meeting with community councils, and we have now pulled together a file of what are the major issues that we need to address. We know that for a long time the titling matter has been a challenge, and I'm committing on behalf of myself and Minister Witter that next year we're going to do all in our power to accelerate the pace of clearing that backlog. So we are taking a frontal approach to treat with the issues that are out there. Additionally, we are trying to celebrate more of the benefits that we still derive from mining. You know, when we look at our last figures in terms of the growth of our country, a lot of it is because of the growth of the mining sector, the export growth of the mining sector, which was over 100%, largely due to the continued rebound of Jamaica and the foreign exchange that comes from that. But additionally, the Jamaica Bauxite Institute continues to do groundbreaking projects. We were in Broadleaf with MP Crawford, where that health center was condemned, was closed, and they now have a brand new health center that is benefiting the residents that the Bauxite Institute spent over $20 million bringing back to fruition. So we're telling more of those stories because mining continues to help not just on the economic value, but from a community by community basis, and we will continue to share those stories. Clearly, we continue to monitor the court action, and the government does play an active part. We are a participant in the court action. And while we do that, one of the things that you will see us do in short order is that we're bringing to the fore now an easier way for citizens to report complaints that they have in relation to mining issues. So we're using the technology to develop an application called Mining Matters, where people will be able to, in real time, if they're in their community, if they're having a challenge with dust, or if they think somebody's mining where they shouldn't be mining, they can take a picture, they can send it in to the mining division, and we'll be able to respond in real time. I think that is one of the issues. People believe that when they raise their concerns, how do they track it? Is there accountability? So we're fixing some of those long-standing problems that have plagued the mining sector. The last area, or the last 2 areas in relation to the time frame, I'm not sure. how you derived at your time frame. But what I would say is that there is high quality bauxite, as you know, and then there's bauxite, right? Depending on who you speak to, there's bauxite for 50 years, right? But some of that bauxite, what it would take for you to really turn that into alumina might not be worth the while. So in terms of the high quality bauxite, we do expect that we have 20 to 30 years of that. And again, we just have to be frank about these things, look at them, and plan around them. And we have had those discussions with all our major players. And as you rightfully said, I've met with all the players now. I've met with Jamalco, and Jamalco continues to drive their rebound and look to expansion. Windalco is going into a new mining area now, so they continue at pace. Discovery, we've spoken about some of the challenges, but now they're trying to put that together and to move forward. And one of the first meetings we had, myself and State Minister Witter, was with JISTV, and we've been working with them to see if they can truly craft a plan to reopen Alpat. All of us want to see the reopening of Alpat, and we do believe that there are sufficient reserves to make that possible, and not only possible, to make that fundamentally viable. So we're going to continue that work in the new year. So with that said, my ask is that the House affirms the resolution. Thank you, Speaker.
The question on the table is that the motion be approved. All those in favor? Aye. All those in favor? Aye. All those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
All those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, the Integrity Oversight Committee of this Honorable House was duly established by Standing Orders 68-1 and 70, and of course, with exceptions relating to 68-3, enabling the leader of opposition business to be chairman of the committee, and the committee then to be formulated. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the objectives were to monitor and review the performance and functions of the Integrity Commission, and to report to both houses of Parliament on any matter relating to the performance of the functions of the Integrity Commission, to review the annual report and any other report of the Commission, and submit recommendations in relation thereto to both houses of Parliament, to assess the effectiveness of the Integrity Commission and appropriateness of its procedures, and to convene and consider a report submitted to Parliament under Section 36 of the Integrity Commissions Act within 30 days of the submission of the report. So, Mr. Speaker, on October 12, 2021, the Minister of Tourism and Leader of House, having obtained suspension of the standing order, moved that the names Honorable Carl Samuda and Mr. Mark Golding be removed from the names the Honorable Everett Warmington and Mr. Julian Robinson be substituted. On February 7, 2023, on a motion by the Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the House passed the following resolution. Be it resolved, with reference to the sessional select, joint select, and select committees which are appointed in the current House session of Parliament, and where these committees have not completed their deliberations, but in the new session of Parliament, this Honourable House be empowered to enable these committees to proceed with the issues referred to them from the stages reached before prorogation. Be it further resolved that the composition of these committees remain unchanged, except where necessary, by further motions taken and approved by this Honorable House. Overview. During the session of Parliament, your committee held one meeting to discuss the Integrity Commission's report of investigation into concerns that certain employees of Petrojam Limited failed to file their statutory declarations for the period ending December 2019. And that, of course, Mr. Speaker, fulfilled the requirement of Standing Order 73D with regards to the reporting procedures and the action to be taken. The committee therefore met today, and the findings were as follows. One was to investigate and report into the concerns that Mr. Michael Wilkinson, process engineer of Petrojam, failed to file his statutory declaration with the Commission for the period 2019. Two, investigation report into the concern that Mr. Sidney Brown, terminal technician Petrojam, failed to file his statutory declaration with the Commission for the period 2019. And three, the report also concerned that Mr. Wayne Salmon, customer service representative Petrojam, failed to file his statutory declarations with the Commission for the period 2019. And four, the investigation report into the concern that Ms. Cheryl Blair, administrative assistant at Petrojam, failed to file her statutory declarations with the Commission for the period 2019. Your committee is of the view, Mr. Speaker, that the Commission adhered to the appropriate review processes and findings that are hereunder. That during the deliberation, members of your committee recommended that the Standing Orders Committee of the House of Representatives examine the terms of reference of the Integrity Commission Oversight Committee outlined in Standing Order 73D. And might I just indicate that that came about because there was a view that the number of reports that are likely to come, given that there are over 10,000 declarations that the Commission has to investigate, may put the committee in a position where it does not even have the capacity to review appropriately. And so there was also a discussion as to what type of capacity building that may need to be done and whether we need to bring technical support to enable a review of those reviews, if you will, and then for something of a summary, an executive summary to be presented so that each member could appreciate better sometimes the voluminous reports which come from the Commission. So members questioned the intent of the framers of the committee's terms of reference and expressed the view that it was not necessary for the committee to thoroughly review the findings of all investigations of the committee. Instead, that the major focus should be on the annual report of the Integrity Commission, meaning to say that the big, response should be the annual reports which come when the basic performance of the Commission is indicated and much of the strong findings are indicated. But Mr. Speaker, we recognize that there had to be a deeper thought behind the framers as 73D was established. And I think that we didn't want to second guess, but we are of the view that whilst we are now in the Joint Select Committee reviewing the act itself overall, that we may want to invite the Speaker of the House to look at the standing orders in its generalities and to see whether or not there is need for any tweaking in that department. Finally, then, the summary for the recommendations. Madam Speaker, now, having considered the above-mentioned report, your committee is in full support of the recommendation of the Integrity Commission with respect to each of the 4 investigations. Your committee, Madam Speaker, wishes to acknowledge with gratitude the Clerk of the House and the staff, administrative and others, who worked with us to enable this report to be presented. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Are there any other contributions? Chairman for the committee.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, thank you. I've listened intently to the report by the Leader of Opposition Business and the Chairman of the committee, and I just wondered whether as part of the role and the function of that committee, it is really to review certain types of report, particularly as regards investigation and that sort of thing. So as opposed to the structural and operational function of the committee itself rather than the actual work and output from the committee. And I just needed some clarity as to what is the thinking on that, because I'm a little unclear about the direction as to where they're going.
Would we allow the opposition leader of business to add his comments, and then House Leader, you would wrap up?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I am a member of the committee, and just to be absolutely clear, because the position was put today that as a member of that committee, I don't feel comfortable reviewing reports of investigation from the Integrity Commission, and in fact propose strongly that when we look at the standing orders, that be reviewed. So the focus will be on their annual report to see whether or not they have enough funding to do their operations and so on, but not to get into their findings. We should adopt without question their recommendations in terms of the various reports. And if people have problems with their findings, it's not for the Commission or the Parliament to deal with, but there are other places where they can go to seek redress. So that has been the position that we put formally today.
So, Madam Speaker, the member is correct in terms of what the deliberations were and the thoughts that were expressed by members. Having regard, however, to the provisions of the standing order as it stands and what Section 36 requires of us, we have no choice but, in fact, to respond accordingly. So my take as chairman, and as I indicated to them, would be to look at how we can resource ourselves to be able to effectively deal with it. And in fact, as we agreed, that we would be focusing on recommendations rather than going through the details of all the recommendations. And the member is right, that it is not intended, I think, for the committee to second guess the commission by any means. In the same way that we function with regards to the boundary committees and the electoral commission, in a similar way, I believe that the spirit, well, the boundaries committee essentially, no, but in the main, the boundaries committee accepts. But the boundaries committee does not have to accept everything. It's a similar way, I think, it is being thought that the oversight committee may act in regards to these interim reports, which could be many, based on the fact of what Section 53 says now, that the commission can report daily, if you will, to the Parliament in terms of its deliberations. So, Madam Speaker, having listened and accepted the views that have been expressed by members, and in fact, I said at the committee that you and I will in fact collaborate on the matter of the standing orders. I now ask that the motion be adopted.
House Leader, in asking that the motion be adopted, let me also respond to indicate we have already moved a motion to convene a review of the standing orders but we hear you loud and clear as chairman of the Oversight Committee. It would not be unusual or improper to focus first on the review of the section that is being deliberated and is of concern, and then we continue in the general review of the standing orders as a whole for the House. Members, those in favor of closure, those against, the ayes have it. Next up, so House Leader, you may need to converse in respect of the, if we want to so under next week, okay. So our final minister under public business to speak will be our Minister of Finance and the Public Service, the Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwest. May we have the podium, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill to amend the Public Debt Act, notice of which was given earlier, and also for me to take it through all its concluding stages.
The question is for the standing orders to be suspended to enable the minister to take second reading of the bill, notice of which he gave earlier, and also for him to take it through all its concluding stages. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister. Oh, sorry.
Madam Speaker, today I rise to introduce an act to amend the Public Debt Management Act. This bill seeks to amend the Public Debt Management Act to allow for the borrowing of monies for pre-investment project planning and development activities and for connected matters. Madam Speaker, Section 10 of the Public Debt Management Act authorizes me as Minister of Finance and the Public Service to borrow for a number of purposes, which includes financing the fiscal deficit, refinancing maturing and outstanding debt, facilitating cash management operations, and financing investment projects approved by this Honorable House, amongst other things. With respect to identifying viable and worthwhile investment projects, which are oftentimes capital projects involving significant expenditure, considerable project planning and development activities may be required as precursors to investment projects. What do I mean by this, Madam Speaker? It means that the government may have to undertake exploratory activities such as a wide range of studies to investigate whether such a project is an ideal one to meet the realities of Jamaica's needs, and not just to identify that project, but to manage and control the risks. Having regard to this, feasibility, environmental, social, gender studies, and other risk assessment exercises may have to be undertaken prior to identifying, managing, and controlling the risk associated with an investment project. Pre-investment activities may involve cost-benefit analyses, stakeholder consultations, project design, and advisory services. Madam Speaker, these exploratory activities demand critical financial resources which the government cannot always readily accommodate in its budget. Given the current financing landscape and the high cost of design and preparation of large-scale projects, Madam Speaker, several multilateral and bilateral creditors offer financing facilities that include project preparation. Considering the increase in capital projects being undertaken by the government, it would be prudent for the government to take advantage of these offerings, and this proposed amendment allows the government the flexibility to do so. So what essentially is the Public Debt Act, which was last amended during our EFF days, sort of has a number of reasons for which a government can borrow. It does not include at the moment project design and project preparation. The kind of projects that the government is able to consider at this point in time with our multilateral and bilateral partners often come with financing for project preparation. And so in order to be able to take these on, it's a perfectly legitimate reason to have to borrow in that you're doing a major project, but a project has to be designed before it's implemented, and so that has to be included in the reasons for the loan. Clause 1 of the bill states the short title and addresses preliminary issues such as the name of the act, being an act to amend the Public Debt Management Act, and it should be read and construed as one with the Public Debt Management Act. Clause 2A of the bill renumbers the section 10 of the act to include a new subsection 1 and a new clause 1BA, which at clause 2B of the bill states additional criterion that a minister may borrow money pursuant to section 9 of the act to finance pre-investment project and development activities. And 3, clause 2C of the bill gives an inclusive definition of the term pre-investment planning and development activities, as it is difficult to say in each case what sort of planning and development activities are required for a given project. The clause states that pre-investment project planning and development activities includes feasibility studies, environmental studies, social studies, gender studies, risk assessment exercises, cost-benefit analyses, stakeholder consultations, advisory services, project design services, and any other activities which involve the identification, management, and control of project risks. Finally, the Memorandum of Object and Reasons provides an overview of the purpose of the bill. Madam Speaker, this Honourable House is asked to note that the government will not always seek external financing to undertake pre-investment planning and development activities. However, with these amendments, the government can employ additional smart and innovative investment strategies to fulfill its commitment to continue to grow the Jamaican economy. Madam Speaker, I now invite members of this Honourable House to support the passage of the bill.
Member Robinson, member from St. Andrew Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, just a couple of questions in relation to this. It's not a controversial amendment, and we don't have an objection to what you're attempting to do. In relation to the pre-feasibility, before you determine whether you even get to the pre-investment stage, what is the criteria that the government uses to decide whether the clock starts ticking on the feasibility that you would have to pay for? So, for example, I believe we need to introduce light rail in Jamaica as a real example. Now, to do that, you'd clearly need to do a feasibility study, which would run into probably a couple $1 million US. But what would you do prior to the feasibility to make a determination about a project? Not every project will meet a threshold, and as such, you have to determine whether you even make the pre-investment to decide that. So that's one. Secondly, would you be capping as a percentage of the total investment how much you spend on pre-investment? I mean, I know these things can range from a low of 2-3% to a high of 15%, depending on the nature of the project. If it's a new highway, you might have environmental impact studies, etc. Is there going to be a cap that you would have on how much you spend in pre-investment as a percentage of what the total project cost would be?
Minister, if you don't mind, would you be so kind as to allow the member from St. Andrew Western
Thank you, Minister. I want to thank the opposition spokesman on finance who asked the question that clarified one aspect of what I was interested in. And so I'm interested in that response as well. But, Minister, I must say, I fully support the intent and the object of the amendment. And I do so from the position that when I served as investment minister previously, this was a point of concern. And even now, in my portfolio shadow portfolio, I see the need for such a facility because in the absence of this kind of facility, we have let a number of projects and interested investors go by us and to seek and to make investments elsewhere. I'm aware of a few, but I do believe that this will advance the process. It first of all assesses the risks for Jamaica and the management and control of the project, but it also allows us to prepare the project and to have the project in a position that our investment partners and those to whom we want to promote the investment will be more responsive and can give a much better response, greater clarity, having done that base work, what I believe is critical base work to be done. So as Minister with investment responsibility, and I predict will be again, I believe it's very important that we do this.
Minister, turn your mic on, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thanks for the questions asked. With respect to the first question on pre-feasibility, so we don't have pre-feasibility as one of the reasons to be able to borrow. We just have feasibility. But with respect to pre-feasibility, that would have to be financed from government resources. And a pre-feasibility is what it says. It is getting to a sense of confidence about the possibility of the project, but not being convinced necessarily that it... No, so the PIAB process, there are two stages. First is a proposal stage, a concept stage, where a concept is assessed. It's not really a pre-feasibility. It's dependent on the type of project. To assess a concept might require a pre-feasibility study, but in the normal scheme of things, for example, if you're buying garbage trucks, the concept doesn't involve any pre-feasibility study, right? And then the second stage is a proposal where the project now is bankable, like all of the things that are required to attract financing are in place. So those are the two steps. I don't know if we can talk offline.
I was just asking the criterion that you would use to determine whether you move from pre-feasibility to pre-investment, because pre-investment is really where you might be spending a couple million US dollars, right? Which is significant sum. So my question really would be, do you have defined before you get to the pre-investment stage, because you have a slew of maybe 50 projects that come in front of you, and you're trying to determine which one you move forward with. And there are a number of factors that you would. So I'm just asking, what would that criterion be and that assessment to get to pre-investment?
So the criteria is usually the extent to which your project is aligned with the approved goals of the government, right? The cabinet has to approve on a periodic basis the plans and the programs of the government. So it has to accord with that. In your hypothetical example of, a light rail, a real example of a light rail system and so forth, you would certainly have a pre-feasibility state even before you get to feasibility. And pre-feasibility, you're asking what would allow us to move from pre-feasibility to feasibility? Well, the pre-feasibility has to point in a successful direction. But that's going to be a qualitative, subjective judgment that different people would have different views as to whether the pre-feasibility meets our criteria. But the most important thing, especially in choosing among projects, is the extent to which it aligns with the stated policies of government. There are times when that doesn't happen. Yeah.
I want to make a distinction. Would this apply where you're dealing with replacement of existing infrastructure? So, for example, we had heavy rains. Fortunately, the last one never washed on a bridge, or like Mickey's Troy Bridge, or other examples where you're going to spend significant amounts, but it is existing infrastructure. This would not be applicable in situations like that, versus a greenfield project, which you're obviously starting for the first time.
What we're here talking about is something entirely different. This here is, and as you can imagine, there's a real life situation that resulted in the need for this amendment, where we're negotiating an arrangement with a multilateral organization to assist Jamaica in the financing of a project. And a part of that assistance requires the project to be designed. And but the design element has to come first. And you look at it, Jamaica cannot borrow from whether it's IDB or the World Bank or any multilateral for those kinds of activities, and hence the need to amend the act to allow that to happen. And it's really a sign of our development, the kind of things that we're able to consider now. This would not have arisen as a problem in the immediate past, because the borrowing was essentially to plug holes in the budget. So, Madam Speaker, I ask, Yes, but I'm saying a different stage of development that we are, and that's why it's so important to stick to our fiscal rules, that we can, or in the foreseeable future, we can projects for the future. This? No. I'll tell you what it is. So, Madam Speaker, I ask now that the third reading of the bill, second reading of the bill.
Minister has concluded the debate and has asked for that the bill be read a second. Minister has concluded the debate and has asked that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Public Debt Management Act to borrow monies for pre-investment project planning and development activities and for connected matters, read a second time.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Members, we're in committee. Minister, we are now in committee. How would you like to proceed?
Inclusive of the memorandum and objects.
The bill is a short one. Minister is asking if we can take the entirety of the bill. I'm not sure what you mean by the memorandum, though, Minister.
No,
I would put through clause 1, 2, title and enacting clause.
Yes.
Question is that we take or put clause 1, 2, title and enacting clause to the House. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do now report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a third time.
You are still in committee, Minister.
Oh, Lord have mercy. I'm rushing.
Minister, I understand. When I'm up here sometimes, it is tiring. I do understand. So the mace is back in place, members, and we are now back in the House. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
Yes, Mr. Minister. The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Public Debt Management Act to borrow monies for pre-investment project planning and development activities and for connected matters, read a third time and passed.
Members, thanks. This is the excitement that I love to have in Parliament, when we're laughing and having fun and not quarreling with each other. It's wonderful. Bill has been signed as passed. Minister, realized you didn't note that they were beating the decks for your bill. Still at public business, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Public Service will now continue with the customs tariff revision. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I beg, sorry, I'm further. In
Revision
public
bill.
business, yes. So, Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of the bill. No, wrong one.
John, is that the resolution 2023 amendment to the resolution?
Yes.
Customs tariff revision amendment number 2 resolution 2023.
I'm not seeing it.
I'm not finding anything.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take notice, which was given by the House Leader earlier.
The question is that the standing order be suspended to allow for us to take the bill, notice of which was given earlier by the House Leader. Those in favor? Regulation, we keep saying bill, but it's a resolution amendment and a resolution. It's loosely referred to as bill, but resolution. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Thank you. So, Madam Speaker, this is the housekeeping matter. The matter for consideration is to increase the common external tariff on chlorine from 0% to 10%. Jamaica, like other CARICOM member states, is obliged to increase the CET and chlorine gas following a decision by ministers at the 55th regular meeting of COTED, which is the Council of Trade and Development, held in November of 2022. At the COTED meeting, the following was agreed. Remember, the common external tariff is a tariff that us in CARICOM agree to be common to all territories in the CARICOM region, right? We're in a customs union, so we impose the same tariffs externally. And we grant unto COTED, in this way we put ourselves, we subject ourselves to the decision of this Council of Ministers to make these decisions from time to time, and we are duty-bound to implement them. The decision made at COTED was as at July 31st, 2023, and this usually means that there is a producer in CARICOM, whereas there was, I'll explain it later. So as at July 31st, 2023, the rate of CET and chlorine gas, 2801.10.00, would be altered from the existing rate of 0 to 5% to the rate of 10%. And as at 1st of July 2023, chlorine gas would be placed on the list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemptions. Madam Speaker, the resolution before the House provides for the implementation of the aforementioned decision, as well as the correction of 2 numerical errors currently appearing in Part 1 of the 4th Schedule of the Customs Act, which is the list of commodities ineligible for conditional duty exemptions. Implementation of this quoted decision is undergirded by Section 5 of the Customs Act, which states that the House of Representatives by resolution may impose import duties, revoke, reduce, or increase or alter any duties so imposed, and may provide for the importation of any goods without payment of customs duty. Madam Speaker, it should be noted that due to various circumstances and the general process of legislative change, implementation of this decision has been inescapably delayed until January 2nd, 2024. I'd like to underscore, Madam Speaker, that the fact that importers of chlorine gas from the intra-regional supplier would not be required to pay the increased CET, in keeping with Article 78.4 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas establishing CARICOM, which outlines that member states shall eliminate existing restrictions on imports and exports of goods of community origin other than those authorized by this treaty. And 79.1, which states the member states shall establish and maintain a regime for the free movement of goods and services within the CSME. Only extra-regional imports will be affected by the increase. Madam Speaker, the country's main use of chlorine gas is the National Water Commission, which sources this product from regional suppliers. In fact, the main regional supplier has a subsidiary company located in Jamaica, which reduces the need to source the chlorine gas from extra-regional sources and incur additional charges. So this is not going to affect the NWC is the main importer. It won't affect NWC because we are sourcing it from a regional supplier who has a subsidiary in Jamaica. So we're really sourcing it from Jamaica. But what it does is if somebody else was to import it from another country, you'd have to pay the 10%. Right? So, Madam Speaker, Jamaica remains committed to honoring our regional and international obligations arising from the various agreements and trade agreements to which we are signatory. Accordingly, the Customs Tariff Revision Amendment No. 2 Resolution 2023 is hereby submitted to this Honourable House for confirmation. So this is perfunctory, so to speak. This is something that we are obligated to do by our treaty arrangements.
Speaker is very much here. Member from St. Andrew West.
Madam Speaker, the Minister is correct about the perfunctory nature. However, I'm obliged to give support on the record for this amendment because it affects an important investment in my constituency. So, and one that I support and supported then and now. So we are fully on board with it and look forward to the fact that it's been implemented in January, as was indicated, is not an issue for intra-regional producers.
Thank you, Member. Minister.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the motion be approved.
Members, the question is that the motion be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Members, we're back to House Leader. I do not believe we have anything else left on the agenda for today. House Leader. Yes, we will be back next week.
Madam Speaker, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until a date to be fixed.
Thank you, House Leader. The question is that the House do now adjourn for a date to be set. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.